Look at this beauty in the garage today. Nothing more, nothing less than the Taycan Turbo GT in this beautiful purple sky with the Vizec package. Right? Pardon the redundancy, but it takes 70 kilos off the Taycan Turbo GT. And even after losing 70 kilos, it still weighs 2,200 kilos. It's a car with very impressive numbers, right? We're talking about 1.5 million reais, 1,100 horsepower. It's the first car to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour or 0 to 96 kilometers per hour in under 2 seconds, according to several American magazines. Here in Brazil, the official 0 to 100 is 2.2 seconds as well. It's a doomed car, a car that won't have a second generation, even though it is, yes, a very beautiful car. It's not me or another expert from this channel saying this, it's Noah. Check out what this is. Beautiful car, right? It's a beautiful car. And this one, beautiful car, yes. And in times of communication and frantic social changes in the era of social networks and smartphones, which ultimately made everyone kind of dumb, yeah, it's kind of hard, right? The biggest example, modern Formula One. Meanwhile, I'm getting in here so you can see what a peculiar car this is. I even left it like this, right? Normally I park, I leave the car here by itself to illustrate a little bit of how absurd this car is, right? This is a 5-meter long car here. Look, let's show them back to back. You can see that the noses are lined up. Look how much bigger it is than the Boxster, right? Yeah, there's a good almost half a meter there, right? Just by eyeballing it here, we can say this wing alone could pay about 5 years of property tax at my house. Yeah, but let's go. Why a car like this won't exist again, right? Because it's a snapshot in time and we see a lot of nonsense on the internet, right? Or that's the reason, right? People have gotten dumber. How much misinformation they're exposed to daily on the internet. By the way, before I show the front seat, let me show you the biggest peculiarity of this car, which is not having a back seat, right? And it helps to show a bit of how absurd this car is. It's a completely nonsensical car for the Brazilian market, right? Who wants to spend $1.5 million on a 1,100 horsepower electric sports car? Only someone with a lot of money who already has many other things, right? Many other Porsches. And then go back to the video about the launch of the Ferrari Ludi, which is already a sales success. Because that's it. It's a car made to be a more convenient choice for the guy who already has half a dozen Ferraris. Look, I came back here because look, Porsche Active Ride, look how much it lifts the car here. And even so, it scrapes the front more than the Boxster, which doesn't scrape here in my garage. Otherwise, I would have bought the car, right? If it were going to scrape in my own garage every day. But let's go. What is this car? Why does it exist? In the United States, look how much it lifted here. I'll show you again. There you go.
Water put.
With the door open, it gives it a nice little lift here. Because in the United States, in the Californian context, again, in the product development snapshot from 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was a duel going on for the supremacy of the electric super sedan, right? We had Tesla with the Model S Plaid and Lucid with the Sapphire, right? And Porsche as the most traditional sports car brand in the world alongside Ferrari. We can put it that way. They couldn't just let those startups swim alone, dominating a territory that used to belong to it. So they made their own super electric sedan with 1,100 horsepower to go from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds. Yeah, because in that niche, at that moment, in that snapshot, it made sense. And you saw that it was taken pretty seriously, right? For example, the carbon seats here don't have adjustments. If you want to recline a bit, well, it's a race car. You can only adjust the distance to find your position. Weight reduction is everywhere. Even the windows are thinner. So what happened from then until now? That's when we see a lot of nonsense being said on the internet. So let me take 2 steps back and try to explain what's happening today. Why won't there be a Taycan? Why are we going to have an electric 718? I've said this 50 times, but let's review it again. The world is moving towards decarbonization. We have the current political moment, which took a little step back in that regard. In the second largest market in the world, and perhaps the most influential, which is the United States. With the current Trumpism, but the trend is irreversible, right? It's like everything in life, isn't it? We're on a planet that's heating up. Let me turn it on here so you can see a little more. The button on the left, wow. But trying to draw a parallel here, right, with the irreversible march of history, maybe, right? I'm talking here, there's this thing going on with Cardaluco. It's violence against women. Maybe today isn't the best time for women regarding this, right? But today is better than 10 years ago. It's better than 20 years ago. It's better than 50 years ago. It's better than 100 years ago. It's not perfect yet. It's far from it. Look at any cause involving freedom and rights, right? Human evolution. Now let's discuss the racial aspect. Is it good or better? Is the condition of black people in Brazil today, or in the world, the best possible? Is it ideal? No, it isn't. In the United States, actually, it even took a few steps back. That's where I want to get. Yeah, but it's better than 20, 50, 100 years ago. Why am I saying this? The electric car, it has a deadline there of 2035 from the European Union. The electric car, no, the decarbonized car, which went down from 90 to 10. That was the factor that, with the end of tax incentives in the United States, caused a strong slowdown, which, due to the general preference of consumers, was not adopted in the same way. And the industry here, hey, what am I saying? When Formula One set the current regulations, they did that 5 years ago, right? They bet on a level of battery technology that didn't materialize. And now the cars on the weekend at Spa, they lose speed in the middle of the straight, right? Because you have to forecast, it's an exercise in futurology that's very difficult. It's the challenge, both for the automotive industry and for the guy who makes regulations for a complex category like Formula One. So, the adoption curve of the electric car starting from 2016. Let's go. Let's use the decarbonized one. When the 2035 deadline was first set by Germany and became a case study, for several major markets around the world, it wasn't the curve that was expected in those markets. But for example, here in Brazil, our native country, third world, in June, the 3 best-selling cars in retail were BYD Dolphin Mini, Geely X2 Yes. In 2026, the 3 best-selling cars in Brazil today, in the current month, are 100% electric. You see how adoption curves respond to different profiles depending on the consumer, purchasing power, even the legal peculiarities, right, of homologation in each market. Why am I going around in circles like this? Because the news is that Porsche had a huge loss. Well, not exactly a huge loss, right? Porsche didn't make a profit last year, just like Honda didn't, and several other automakers. Even Ford took 2 steps back on this. Yeah, they had made a projection, right? Because that's the thing. The business of developing cars is about looking at what's going to happen 5 years from now. And it's really tough to do that, right? So you make a projection, you develop a portfolio, you invest, thinking about 5 years from now, and the demand curve for what you invested in the most turned out to be different. So you had to develop another range of products to fill the gap, right? From what you expected the electric curve to be like, it turned out like this, but notice that it's still growing, right? That's where the gap appeared, and the automakers had to spend double the development budget. And is that what caused this big fiscal penalty for so many last year? Yeah, but if you're listening to the guy, you see? Last year, Porsche didn't make a profit because of the electric car. They canceled the electric car. No, they didn't cancel the electric car. And what about the legislation? Europe, China, United States. Yes, Donald Trump has already had his time. At 80 years old, he won't last until 2035. That's the point. It's the decarbonization curve for human mobility. It's inexorable, and that shouldn't affect us enthusiasts at all, right? Here it is, look. My Boxster with the exhaust makes some of the most beautiful sounds in Brazil. It's right there. No one is going to ban it. Now, most of the 718 volume over the next few years will come from the electric 718. All of this is a preamble for us to talk about this guy here, because he's kind of the result of all that, right? He's a snapshot of the moment. He's a very peculiar car. Exactly because of that, he's a car that doesn't make any sense, right? If you want to make the fastest electric car at Nürburgring, you don't pick a sedan and you get rid of the back seat, right? Part of it, I don't know, would be in the case of an electric Porsche 911. But in this attempt to predict the future and understand where the lineups are going, Porsche, in their strategy, always kept the 911 as a sacred cow, right? Which was electrified, right? We have the electric turbos today in the 911, but we don't have a fully electric 911 because that role went to the Taycan at first, right? And judging by the latest rumors about the craziness that's going to be this restructuring of the Volkswagen Group, eliminating 50 of their products, it seems, right? In this still speculative scenario regarding Porsche's immediate future, when we look toward 2030, it seems we'll have the 718 as the electric sports car, Cayenne and Macan both with combustion and electric versions, and the 911 with combustion and electrified options, right? But anyway, there are a lot of board meetings and a lot of smart people making decisions at Porsche right now. Take a look at how essential the racing seat really is here. You can see the seatbelt also goes through here. And the carbon seat must cost a fortune. The interior is really minimalistic, right? The weight reduction in this WISAC package is really taken seriously here. And in the end, right? Because after all, this car is a big anachronism, isn't it? It's like a snapshot of a specific moment when it made sense, and it won't make sense anymore, right? It's in Porsche's product lineup in the upcoming cycles. We've already driven this car on the track. I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the video. If you want a more detailed technical review of the Taycan Turbo GT with the WISAC package, check it out on the channel. To really see us pushing this car hard on the track, including Felipe Nasser joining our video. But now I'm going to enjoy it, right? What's it like to drive this 1.5 million Rs anachronism? 1,100 horsepower, 2 tons, and 5 meters long in Sao Paulo? Come with me on the way to another Casio Cortez podcast over at Chataka, where I'll show a bit of real-world use of this machine here. Let's go. So, how does it drive, Congressman? It's actually pretty funny to drive it in Sao Paulo, right? Because it's really a car made to be used on the track. It's a great engineering exercise where Porsche shows what it's capable of doing in terms of electric performance, right? This car exists for that. This car is a showcase, right? It's almost a prototype because if you really wanted to make a car to break records at Nürburgring, like I said, you wouldn't start from a platform that's 5 meters long and over 2 tons. That being said, it's surprisingly friendly, thanks to the magic, right? Of the Porsche Active Ride, the air suspension that raises and lowers the car. And in normal mode here, it drives really nicely for the car. The steering wheel is that classic Porsche GT steering wheel, right? With someone from Car and Driver, I don't remember who, gave this definition that I love, which is, it feels like you're petting a skinny cat, right? It's the cat's small furry bone like a thin steering wheel, and here are the pedals, right? Here you slightly increase the regeneration on the left one. On the right one, you activate attack mode, which you can see here, and that's when. You unleash it on all 4 wheels. That's where you have more than 1,100 horsepower, right? In normal mode, not in attack mode, you only have 1,078, if I'm not mistaken. The gear shift is here, right? On this little switch on the right side, and the button, right? For a Porsche enthusiast, there has to be a way. You don't really need to use the button. It's just there for the record, right? Because when you get in the car with the key, the car already starts, you put it in D, and it's already on. In normal mode, you don't have sound. When you switch it here to Sport Plus, look, boom, it goes boom. And the suspension, look, now you can really feel it, right? From the acceleration and the suspension, of course, it gets much stiffer. You saw that the range dropped a lot, right? In normal mode here, look, whoa. The range goes to 390, but just by switching to Sport Plus and unleashing full power, it drops to 342. It's in metro ranges 447, if I'm not mistaken, but you know how it is, right? A car made to go full throttle like this one here is hardly ever going to deliver. It's almost not made to deliver maximum range, right? I'm going to give it a little push here, look. We went from 40 to 80 kilometers per hour in, I don't know, less than a second, right? It's really absolutely violent is the word, right? There's no other word for it here. Let me pass the speed camera. You're in Sao Paulo. Nobody, look, 120 kilometers per hour, nobody around you is going to be ready for that. Let's put it back to normal mode here in the assistance system, right? For the PASM. But let's leave it in normal mode here too, so we don't scare the people around us. Nobody, right? The human brain has been conditioned by 100 years of cars on the road. Nobody is expecting that, right? We see you in the rearview mirror, I don't know, 20 meters away, and half a second later, you're right there, right? It really is an acceleration that we can almost say the street can't handle, right? It's really a beast, a track brute. But, right, among these track beasts, it's the most docile, right? The most docile Porsche GT for you to use every day, precisely because of the suspension, because of the active ride that makes the car's ride very pleasant, right? Even with those big wheels, 21-inch in the front and 22 in the back, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, the seat here on a long trip will get tiring, right? If you want to take a nap, yeah, like on the side of the road, take a 20-minute rest before continuing your trip. You can't recline the seat. You don't have a back seat to lie down on. Anyway, small inconveniences. And the other thing that stands out, right? When you look at a car with this profile, this performance potential, it's the brakes, right? The brake modulation, even switching from my Boxster to this car. Look, the Renegade is coming into the lane here. It was coming, look, I'm going to hit the brakes or you can't see it, right? But the pedal travel is quite long, really long, which I imagine is exactly to maximize regeneration, right? It makes you, end up spending more time on the brakes. I don't know. But it's really different from what you expect from a Porsche GT brake, right? You expect that short travel and a stiff pedal, right? So you have that sensitivity at the limit. Here, it's mushy, as they say in English, right? Kind of soft, right? I think that would be the best translation. It's not obvious that the caliper is clamping there, but I think the long travel gives you that feeling that the pedal isn't giving you that bite you expect, right? Of course, if you slam on the brakes hard, it works. If you give it a quick tap, right? But in daily use, like the first time you drive the car, you even get a little startled, you know? In traffic, you want to stop, nothing happens, then suddenly, oh, there it is. Yeah, but again, right? The use of this car on the street is restricted to the drive to the track, right? It was born to go to the track, and then, right? We know how it is in the reality of the Brazilian market, right? I see a lot of hardcore Porsche fans liking the idea of having an electric one, right? For daily use as part of the rotation, right? All the benefits and advantages of an EV in daily life are clear, as you all know well. Yeah, but then, okay, you're very well served with the Taycan, right? The Taycan Turbo GT is... Olha, I don't know if Porsche sold any in Brazil, right? Of course they sold it or they wouldn't have brought it. Still, it probably only sold in single digits, right? Really, it's for the guy who's a big fan of the brand, who wants to complete his Porsche collection and have every type of Porsche. It's one of the most unusual offerings because in this Brazilian reality, we don't have the Lucid Sapphire or the Tesla Model S Plaid. For the Taycan Turbo GT to compete, it's a very quote-unquote unnecessary car, but it's a really interesting topic, right? We ended up talking much more about market reality and how difficult and challenging it is for the industry to plan ahead, right? How making cars is ultimately a constant exercise in futurology, right? You always have to be trying to figure out what the picture will be for consumer behavior, environmental legislation, and politics, right? International geopolitics, right? When it comes to electric cars, tariffs on Chinese products, emission legislation in every major market in the world, consumer preferences, evolution, right? Consumer preferences, all of that, it impacts things, and it's very hard to get all of that exactly right when you look at the horizon 5 or 6 years from now. Are we clear? Like this video, subscribe to the channel, that always helps us a lot. And hey, goodbye Taycan Turbo GT. We're in the final stretch to return this beauty to the folks at Porsche Brazil. Thanks a lot, take care, and a big hug right when the traffic stopped.